Hello everybody, in this video we're going to talk about how to factor polynomials completely, or just to check to make sure we have done all the factoring that we can do so that we have our final answer in factored form. So a polynomial is factored completely when it is written as a product of unfactorable polynomials with integer coefficients. So whenever we're factoring, we just want to check to make sure of these 5 things that we have here on what to look for. So we're going to see, can we factor out a GCF? Can we look for the difference of two squares? Right, is one of our binomials x squared minus 9 or x squared minus 16? Then we can go a step further. Do we have a perfect square trinomial? Right, when I take the middle term b and divide it by 2 and square it, does it equal a times c? Well, if it does, then we can rewrite it as the square of a binomial. Can we write, or do we have a trinomial that's ax squared plus bx plus c? And we can factor that by using the magic x, right? Or maybe a is 1, so we can just find two numbers that add to b and multiply to c. And lastly, do we have a 4-term polynomial that we could factor by grouping? Okay, so there's 5 different things to look for there. I have videos on all 5 of those techniques or those methods. So in the description below, I will post the links to those videos. All right, let's look at some examples. So for number 1 and number 2, we just are going to factor. But if you notice on number 3, we have an equal sign. So we're going to actually solve that equation for x. So for number 1, we have 2x cubed plus 6x squared minus 2x. So notice all of these terms at least have an x, and they all have coefficients that are multiples of 2. So we can factor out a 2x. So if I factor out a 2x, what do I multiply 2x by to get x cubed? Well, that's x squared. 2x times what gives me 6x squared, and that would be 3x. And then 2x times negative 1 would give me negative 2x. So now I have a trinomial, and I can see, okay, b is 3 and c is negative 1. So I'm going to think, are there two numbers that add to 3 and multiply to negative 1? Okay, well, multiply to negative 1, that's either 1 or 1 and negative 1 is our only options there, right? Well, if we add those together, that is not 3. So this trinomial is no longer factorable. So that would be our final answer, just 2x and then times x squared plus 3x minus 1, and we're done. So for number 2, now we have 5x to the 4th power minus 45x squared. So if we notice, we have a 5 and a 45. Those are both multiples of 5. So we can factor out at least a 5. But then we have x to the 4th and x squared. So let's try and factor out the greatest common factor, right? So let's factor out x squared. So if we factor out this x squared, now we're going to figure out what we need to multiply by to get 5x to the 4th minus 45x squared. So 5x squared times x squared would be 5x to the 4th minus 5x squared times 9 would give me 45x squared. And so now we have x squared minus 9, and this is the difference of two squares. And this will factor as x plus 3 and x minus 3. And that's our final answer. We have 5x squared as one of our factors, we have x plus 3, and we have x minus 3. All right, the last one, number 3, is an equation. So we're going to make sure that we can set this equal to 0 so that we can then factor and use the zero product property. So first thing I want to do is subtract this 24x so that we can have all of our terms on one side of the equal sign. So 3x squared plus, 3x cubed plus 6x squared minus 24x equals 0. Now we're going to factor the left side. Let's factor out a 3x. So now we have x squared plus 2x minus 8 equals 0. Okay, so 3x times x squared would be 3x cubed. 3x times 2x would be 6x squared. And 3x times negative 8 would be negative 24x. Now let's look at our trinomial. Do we have two numbers that add to 2 and multiply to negative 8? We do, right? Let's think negative 2 and 4. So we can now write 3x and then x minus 2 times x plus 4, and that's equal to 0, right? Because negative 2 plus 4 would be positive 2. Negative 2 times 4 would be negative 8. And now we can use the zero product property, which says if I have a product, which I do here, I have 3 factors being multiplied together, and it says it equals 0. So the zero product property tells me if I'm multiplying and my answer is 0, one of the things that I am multiplying had to have been 0, right? So now we're going to say 3x could be 0. So if we divide both sides by 3, we get x equals 0. X minus 2 could be equal to 0. So we add 2 to both sides and we get x equals 2. Or x plus 4 could be 0, so we subtract 4 and we get x equals -4. So our three solutions here, or our three roots, would be x equals 0, x equals 2, and x equals -4. Okay, and that is how you factor polynomials completely.